Good morning, everyone. I'm David Barish, Chairman of the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. As always, I'm asking people to put their electronic devices on silence. With us today, Fred Strathmeyer, representing Russ Redding, Secretary of the Department of Agriculture, Jennifer Langen, representing Joe Torsello, the State Treasurer, and Ratty Skipworth, representing Secretary of Revenue, Daniel Hassel. Thank you for joining us today. Quorum of the board members being present, I'll call the proceedings to order. First order, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the board held an executive session yesterday, Tuesday, November 27th, to discuss personnel matters and to conduct quasi-judicial deliberations relating to matters that are going to be considered by the board today. I'd also like to announce the board will be holding 2 public input hearings in Western Pennsylvania next week. The first will be on Tuesday, December 4th at 1 p.m. in the Big Beaver Borough Fire Station, number 14, 621 Friendship Road, Darlington, Pennsylvania. At that time, the board will collect testimony on the Category 4 casino application submitted by Mount Airy. Second hearing will be held on Wednesday, December 5th at 10 a.m. in the Hempfield Township Municipal Building, 1132 Woodward Drive, Greensburg, Pennsylvania. At that time, the board will collect testimony on the Category 4 application submitted by Stadium Casino LLC. Anyone wishing to present testimony at either of the public hearings should register prior to the hearing by visiting the board's website, gamingcontrolboard.pa.gov, and click on Mount Airy Casino, Beaver County hearing, and or the Stadium Casino license, Westmoreland County hearing. Under the quick links section of our homepage, deadline for registration to speak for both hearings is noon on December 3rd. The list of those registered to speak will be posted on the board's website. Those who wish to place written comments on the record can do so prior to the hearing through the same website link by email to boardclerk@pa.gov or by fax 717-265-7416. Mailed comments must be postmarked no later than December 3rd and mailed to Pennsylvania Game Control Board, Post Office Box 69060, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, 17106, to the attention of the board clerk. That was a mouthful. All right, then. First public hearing this morning, Downs Racing petition to authorize conduct of interactive gaming. If you're present, please come forward. Morning. Before we begin, as always, I'd ask you to have everybody who's going to speak today please state and spell their name for the court reporter. And if you have non-attorney witness, please have him stand to be sworn at this time.
We do have one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. May it please the Board, my name is Mark Stewart. It's S-T-E-W-A-R-T, with the law firm of Eckert Siemens, and I'm here today representing Mohegan Sun Pocono. With me is Avi Alroy, who is the Vice President of Interactive Gaming for Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment. And we are before you this morning on Mohegan Sun Pocono's petition for an interactive gaming certificate, which is an amended petition seeking 2 certificates. With that, I will turn the presentation over to Mr. Alroy for his presentation.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Yes. Yes. My name is Avi Alroy, Avialroy. Good. So I have with me the presentation. I'm going to go slide by slides. A little bit small. I'll try to read it. So Mohegan Gaming Entertainment, we are an experienced provider of interactive games with a skin and part ownership of iGaming license in New Jersey since 2015 with our Mohegan Sun division. Our strategy is to partner with a superior interactive gaming operator to provide Pennsylvania partners with interactive casino experience. Our amended interactive gaming petition seeks authorization to offer non-peer-to-peer interactive games that simulate slot machines and non-peer-to-peer interactive games that simulate table games. So our executive leadership team, Kevin Brown is our chairman of the Mohegan Tribe. He's actually today at a sports betting conference in New York City, so he's very active in the interactive space. Mario Contomarcos, our CEO of Mohegan Gaming and Entertainment. Michael Silberling, our COO, both people I worked under. And myself, the Vice President of Interactive Gaming. Anthony Carlucci is the President and General Manager of Mohegan Sun Pocono. Our interactive gaming operator and partner. So Mohegan Sun Pocono is teaming up with an operational partner to launch its first iGaming skin in Pennsylvania. The partner is a well-known public company in Europe and has filed for an application in New Jersey as well as plan to be presented both in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. The partner will operate it with approved and licensed vendor for Know Your Customer, or KYC, if you're familiar with it. It's basically a player account management and wallet in order to securely and appropriately cater to Pennsylvania players. The KYC portion of it is going to be provided by Scientific Games, including LexisNexis for player verification and social security number authentication, and GeoComply for geolocation authentication. The player account and wallet, or as they call it, the OPS from Scientific Games, the player account management and wallet system that connects to licensing payment system, including Visa, PayPal, and others. And then the content aggregator, which is connecting to first and third-party gaming system for slot and table games on various licensed vendors. So you have here kind of a scheme, complicated scheme. Perhaps this is not the right audience for this, but it's really basically how it all works out on a server-based gaming system and how it connects between the wallet, the KYC, and the actual games to be worked on the internet. So the next 2 pages is basically just showing you what we're doing so far in New Jersey, which we intend to replicate in some shape or form in New Jersey as well, in Pennsylvania as well. This is our kind of front page for Mohegan Sun Online Casino. It's launched in 2015 in New Jersey. We were actually the first to launch what we call 100% bonus on a $1,000 deposit. We were the first to launch with over 400 games. We have a very wide variety of games in New Jersey. We have proven success in the region and also with a long-term strategic view of the market. This is just another kind of page to give you an idea of how it looks and feels. It's important to note, this is a desktop view, but it's also highly responsive for mobile view. We're looking both into mobile and desktop. Obviously, mobile is soon approaching to be more market share than desktop. And here on our last page is just to give you an idea of how we're committed to responsible gaming. Mohegan Sun strives to create an unparalleled online gaming experience. Our top priorities are safety and responsibility. So here's what we do to make that happen. We educate our team members to recognize problem gaming and give them resources to help. We provide information and assistance to our players. We participate in programs and initiatives to increase problem gaming and awareness, and also obviously prevent underage gaming. Here are some of the tools that the players will have in hand. Players will be able to set both time, deposit limits, and other limits if they want to exclude themselves from playing. Players can also call us and ask to be removed entirely from the system, to be excluded. That's it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, that's all we have on our presentation. We're available for questions from OEC or the board.
Council?
We have no questions. However, we would like to amend our answer to reflect that condition 25 reflect that an $8 million payment will be due as opposed to a $12 million payment based upon the amendment filed by Mohegan Sun.
Could you explain that a little bit publicly?
Mohegan Sun is
Why it changed?
Mohegan Sun is only seeking 2 out of the 3 interactive gaming authorizations that are available. And they filed that amendment on November 13, 2018. As a result, we would like to amend our condition rather than they pay a $12 million fee, that they pay the $8 million fee for the 2 games.
That was where they decided not to pursue poker. Is that what you did?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And that's all we have with regard to any questions. We do have a statement to make whenever the board is ready to hear that.
Happy to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Manifesto on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Good morning. The Office of Enforcement Counsel, along with the Bureau of Gaming Operations, Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement, Bureau of Gaming Laboratory Operations, Bureau of Casino Compliance, Bureau of Licensing, Office of Diversity, Office of Racetrack Gaming, and the Office of Compulsive and Problem Gambling have reviewed and consulted extensively on the petition, the appendices, as well as the amendment filed by Downs Racing LP to conduct interactive gaming and for the issuance of an interactive gaming certificate. After which, OEC filed an answer in this matter requesting that the board order the implementation of certain listed conditions if it was so inclined to grant the relief requested in Downs Racing's LP's petition. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the approval of Downs Racing LP's amended petition to conduct interactive gaming and to the issuance of an interactive gaming certificate to Downs Racing LP, subject to the proposed conditions outlined in OEC's answer and with the amendment that Mr. Petrie has now placed on the record regarding Condition 25, filed on December 13, 2018, and any additional conditions that the board wishes to impose. We are, as stated earlier, available for any questions.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
Good morning. On one of your slides, it doesn't really matter which one, it says, we were the first to launch 100% bonus on $1,000. I have no idea what that means, and I want to understand what that means in terms of, well, just explain it. What that means.
Sure. So it's fairly common to for your first deposit to kind of have you nicely to experience the game initially is to give you a bonus, and usually you get, when you say 100% is, let's say I deposit $100, I get an additional $100 to spend on the casino. So that's a 100% bonus. So, and usually in New Jersey, up until we came into the place and launched our system, it was 100% bonus up to $500. So if you deposit $500, you would get an additional $500. And we just increased that to $1,000 to just give you a better experience when you do that first deposit.
So it's not, that's helpful because it's not, I get a 100% bonus if I deposit $1,000. It's up to $1,000.
That's right.
So you're not trying to entice people to, on the beginning, kind of like spend this much money to get this.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe it's I should have amended that in the presentation
It's
to say
not what
up
your
to.
slide says.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so that's helpful understanding. So it's up to
yes.
$1,000. Okay.
Any questions? Any other questions? Petitioners, do you have any comments on what you've heard so far? Questions or comments?
Just, Mr. Chairman, that we agree to the conditions as amended by OEC, and we would move our presentation into the record and ask approval of our motion to protect confidential information.
Consider your presentation so moved. We're going to vote on this matter later today under the Office of General Counsel's portion of the agenda. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Next up, Mountain View Thoroughbred Category 1 license renewal. The petitioners can come forward, please. Should we rent another hall for you guys?
There you go. Got everybody.
Everybody's here. Again, I'd ask that everyone who's going to speak today to please state and spell your name for the court reporter prior to your presentation. Additionally, could we please have all non-attorney witnesses stand and be sworn at this time? Thank you. Petitioners may begin.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Adrian King from the Ballard Spahr law firm here on behalf of Penn National Gaming, and in particular for the purpose of this hearing, Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association, LLC. As you know, we're here for the final hearing before the board with respect to the renewal of Mountain View's Category 1 license. We've brought a full slate of witnesses to answer any questions that you may have. Let me just briefly introduce everyone. Going from my right, John Finnemore, who is our Senior VP for Regional Operations. Dan Ime, who is the VP and General Manager of Hollywood Casino. Heather Nycari, who is our VP of Finance and CFO at the property. India Smith, who is our VP of Human Resources. And Alex Vizda, who is the Director of Compliance at the property. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to John, and we'll get right into the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. John Finnemore, JOHN-FINAMORE. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and staff, good morning. I think you've seen our presentation in various forms several times over the last few weeks, so I'm going to get through this pretty quickly. But I think some of it is important to repeat this morning. As you know, we started in 1972 in Grantville, Pennsylvania with what is now today Hollywood Casino at Penn National Racecourse. But much has changed over those years, as you know the story. I think most significantly today, some updates to share with you for the company. Last time we spoke, the acquisition of Pinnacle Entertainment was not complete yet. It has now been completed as of October the 15th. And that transaction made Penn National the largest operator of regional casinos in the country. It's at this point a $5 billion company in terms of revenue, with 40 casinos, with several others in the pipeline. We will be completing a transaction for another casino in Louisiana, Margaritaville, in early January. We just announced the acquisition of Greektown Casino in Detroit last month. And of course, we've got the two Category 4 properties under development in Pennsylvania. That will take us to 44 properties, and if all goes well, that will also make us a Fortune 500 company, which we're very proud of. And again, starting with the humble beginnings in Pennsylvania, as you know, we remain the only publicly traded company, gaming company, to be headquartered in Pennsylvania. We still maintain our corporate office in Wyomissing, Pennsylvania, with approximately 150 team members at that location. Back to Hollywood Casino at Penn National briefly. As you know, we just celebrated our 10th anniversary in February of this year, and since opening, the property has paid over $1.6 billion in taxes to the Commonwealth, and we continue to employ approximately 800 residents of the Commonwealth. And looking forward, before I turn this over to Dan, a lot of exciting things for the company ahead. as part of the Pinnacle transaction, the Meadows property joined our family in October, and we're working with the management team there to incorporate that property into the portfolio. I believe several of you had a chance yesterday to tour the sports betting operation at the Grantville property. We're very pleased, and Dan will give you an update on that, on how that startup went. And we certainly thank the staff for working with us to get that done through some challenges, but we're very pleased with the initial results, as you saw yesterday. I mentioned the Cat 4s that are under development. Again, we're excited to work on those two opportunities. Certainly iGaming is soon behind, and we are also very busy working on VGTs at truck stops in the Commonwealth. So again, exciting time for the company. I appreciate your time this morning, and let me turn the presentation over to Dan Ime, our General Manager.
Okay, thank you, John. Dan Ime, IHM. So good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Board. And thank you again for the opportunity to be here today. Can you guys hear me okay? Because we've got a lot of people up here. And move over.
Just point it towards you. It's very directional.
There we go.
There you go.
Thank you. High technology. So this slide here is our Hollywood Casino leadership team. We have a very seasoned team with a lot of depth of experience. So just a few things I wanted to point out on this slide. 7 of the executives on this slide had been with the company since pre-opening 2008. In fact, Heather, who is sitting to my right, was just recently promoted to Vice President and our CFO. We also have a gentleman, Fred Lipkin, who is noteworthy. He's been with the property for 45 years, and he will be retiring at the end of this year, but he's had a long time at the property. We do have 50 team members who have been with the property for 20 plus years, and actually 5 of those team members have been with the property since 1972. So John indicated that Chairman and some of the board, you had an opportunity to visit the property and also see the operations. We're very excited to be the first in the Commonwealth to offer sports wagering. We did have our testing, which actually started on November 15th, which was a Thursday. We had 2 successful days of testing. Once completed, our first official day was on Saturday the 17th. It was a very interesting testing day. Thursday also happened to be a first for the first major snowstorm that hit central Pennsylvania. And I know John indicated we're very thankful for the staff. And I also wanted to thank Kevin O'Toole and all the staff, all their hard work and dedication. And the dedication was unbelievable as some of the staff members took 3 hours to get to the property to make sure that they were there for our first testing day. So we do appreciate that. John?
Just to give you an update on the food court renovation we told you about last time we met, this is a $3.5 million renovation of the food court, which was original from the opening 10 years ago. The company has partnered with Fabio Viviani, who's a celebrity chef, to do 3 of these eatery concepts, one in Charlestown, West Virginia, one in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, and this one, most importantly, in Grantville. The renovated food court will open on December 22nd. The one in Charlestown has already opened, and I can tell you that we've seen significant increases in cover counts, in average check. The average check has gone up about 25%, and overall revenues have gone up about 35–40% since we opened the facility. So really great food. This is a great partner, and I think this is going to be an exciting addition for the property, opening, as I said, December 22nd.
You may have to aim it this way.
What's that?
Aim it this way.
If not, let's go this way. There we go. I'll use.
Okay. So the next slide is just to talk a little bit about some of the marketing initiatives. Obviously, we spend a lot of resources and dollars on marketing every month for the facility. Some of those dollars are spent on broadcast, print, social media. Most of the monies that we spend are concentrated within the central part of PA. We do have secondary markets that expand beyond that. This slide just shows a few of the promotional aspects. These look like they focus on October. The cash progressive giveaway, did not go in October. So actually tomorrow we have a drawing. So it's at $110,000. If it does not go tomorrow, it will go to $120,000 in December, and we guarantee somebody will be a cash winner of $120,000 in December. And then the other thing to note here is the Harley giveaway. We do partner with a lot of our community members regarding a lot of different things. This happened to be a partnership with Susquehanna Harley Davidson. We gave away a Harley, that was in October. That happened to be our highest October drop in the last 5 years for the month of October. So the promotion did very well for us. Next slide is looking at slot casino operations. So on the left side looks at gross terminal revenue. You can see we started in 2008. 2010, where you see the peak, that was when table games were introduced to the market. And you can also see on that slide, beginning in 2014, the market stabilized for us, and we were running on average around $209 million per year. We currently have 2002 slot machines on the floor, ranging from penny to $100 denoms. 70% of our floor is penny denom. And $34 million were invested since 2008, and that is in new slot product and conversions on the gaming floor. $1.2 million, it says up here, was our investment in 2018. However, we did decide to allocate an additional $570,000 in the fourth quarter of this year to spend for new slot product. So that number now for 2018 is $1.77 million in capital spend. Next slide. Table games, casino ops. As I indicated, 2010 was the first year of table games, peaked at 2011. We saw the market stabilize around 2014. And we've been running approximately around $35 million in table games revenue. We have currently 251 jobs within table games, which is our largest department, followed by food and beverage. And we have 75 table games, and you can see 55 are banking. We have 17 poker tables. And on this note was a pretty significant amount. We actually had a $737,000 bad beat jackpot. And 2 months later, we had another $258,000 bad beat jackpot. So it's currently gotten up to that 200 and some thousand again. So we'll have to see what happens there. Next slide is looking at some of our branded facilities. John talked about the eatery, which we're very excited about. Once the eatery is up, we will have 12 different dining options at the Hollywood Casino, and they'll range from casual to high-end options. And again, this is just the logos of the brands. On the far left is the eatery, the new eatery. The other outlets here are both casino, and we also have trackside different food amenities. The H Lounge is where we offer our free live entertainment on the weekends, Friday and Saturdays. Going again into dining and entertainment, this just shows our Final Cut, which we're very proud of. It's our high-end steakhouse. It's received the Award of Excellence every year since 2010. And I did notice there's a mistake on the slide. Actually, 2015, we did receive the Award of Excellence as well, so we've had it every single year. The Best of Award in 2018, that is actually, we are the only restaurant in the area to achieve that honor, so we're very proud of that. We do offer a little over 500 different varieties of wine within our Final Cut Steakhouse, and it's a little over 100,000 in terms of inventory of wine. And that, turn it over to Heather.
Heather, Nicarry. I would like to talk about the positive economic impact Hollywood Casino has both locally and throughout the Commonwealth. We've paid $1.6 billion in gaming and racing taxes and associated fees since 2008. $156 million has been generated by the local share assessment, which directly benefits our local and county governments. We've paid $258 million in salaries and wages and $75 million in benefits on behalf of our employees since 2008. And we purchased $13 million of goods and services annually from vendors located within Pennsylvania. $4.9 million of those purchases are made from vendors within Dauphin County. Our purchasing department continually seeks out local businesses as well as minority, women, veteran, LGBT, and disadvantaged owner business enterprises. We spend $1.2 million annually with vendors classified as such. We continue to reinvest in the property. As we mentioned earlier, we have a major project currently underway with the $3 million eatery project and the recently completed sportsbook renovation. We'll also be starting some restroom renovation projects in 2019. Turn the presentation over to India.
Good morning, India Smith, E-N-D-E-A, Smith. So this slide talks a little bit about the individuals that we call our team members. So we still have approximately 900 team members on board, 41% making up females, 19% racial minority. Certainly highlighting that the majority of our team members are in fact PA residents, and with a very large portion directly living in Dauphin or Lebanon counties. On the right side of this slide, you see a host of benefits. Those are benefits that we offer to all of our full-time employees. And then in addition, the majority of those are also offered outside of the medical to all of our part-time team members as well. At the end of the slide there, you'll see with the new sports betting, we were able to hire approximately 20 employees. That's directly with the sports book and then indirect with other positions that help support that function. A very important component for us is making sure that our team members are engaged. We're very proud of the engagement scores that we have at the property. Throughout Penn, we all are evaluated on those scores. We're very pleased in PA at PNRC. We are the top tier 1 property as far as our engagement scores are, and then number 3 overall in all of the Penn enterprise. So you'll see just some of the fun things. We have a very competitive team at PNRC, so they like to do all kinds of fun stuff. So roughly 86%, 88.5% engagement score. And then lastly, too, making sure that we recognize our team members on a regular basis, but this is a very special event that we host every year, our Sammy Awards, recognizing the best of the best. And you'll see some of the images there and the awards that they receive for receiving their individual awards. Alex?
All right, use this one. Alex Vizda, A-L-E-X-H-V-I-Z-D-A. Good morning. I'm talking about responsible gaming. So with the passage of the expanded gaming last year, we are now transitioning over to the 1-800-GAMBLER number across our property and all of our advertisements. With respect to responsible gaming, even before you get hired with our company, you hear about responsible gaming. So everybody, no matter what position you are applying for, whether it's a VP position, a cook position, housekeeping position, you go through, as part of your interview process, a meeting with members of the executive leadership team who talk to you specifically about responsible gaming and about customer service and how important those two are to us. Then you get training on responsible gaming in your onboarding during your orientation. You get training during your pre-shifts every day. I do quarterly knowledge checks with a random sample of team members who we pull out, and I question them on our standards, sort of like a pop quiz. And then we do annual retraining where we bring in an individual from the Council on Compulsive Gambling of Pennsylvania for that. We also, whenever there's a responsible gaming issue that comes before the board and results in an action by OEC, we also share those with our team members to show that these things don't happen in a bubble, that they have real-world consequences. About a year ago, beginning of November of 2017, we improved our ID verification system with Veridox. You can see how many ID checks we did there in 2017. And you can see the number of minors that were denied entry. That's been declining each year. We believe as part of both the board's efforts and the industry's efforts to make clear to the public that what will happen to you if you come to a casino and you're underage, and that you can't even walk across the floor in a casino. The statewide self-exclusion list is interfaces with the Veridox, as does our own property self-exclusion list. And at the bottom there, for our security department, because they're our first line of defense against underage individuals, for every 100 days that they go without having an underage on the floor, everybody in the security department gets $100. I'm not going to jinx it, but later this week, hopefully that number will be going up. Next slide. So we also are very involved with our charities, as you can see on the left there, over the last couple of years. So since 2008, we've donated $1.32 million to local and regional charities, but over the last 3 years, we've increased our charitable contributions significantly. One of the things we've done is focus on more core charities and charities that can spread the donations amongst other worthy charities. So, for example, the Pennsylvania Veterans Foundation makes grants to other charities that support veterans. It's easier and more effective for us to funnel it into these main charities. And then, of course, at the bottom, the IBD Research Center at Penn State Milton Hershey, that's something we support every year. We run the tournament that Penn National hosts, and that has raised over $3.75 million for IBD research. So our last slide here, our main charity is the American Cancer Society's Relay for Life. So Penn National CEO Tim Wilmot is on the CEOs Against Cancer. And a couple years ago, corporate made it a competition amongst all the Penn properties to see who could raise the most money throughout the year for Relay for Life. And as India told you, we're very, very competitive. So you can see we've gone up significantly. So in 2017, our property raised $32,000, and we came in third amongst all the Penn properties. This past year, we raised $48,000, came in second, and in 2019 we'll be first. I'm just going to guarantee that on the record here. But this year, you can see we did a Star Wars theme fit in with, and this is something our entire property. We have events going on for team members, events that customers can participate in, and it's something we do literally all year long, every month, and it's been a great engagement activity for our property as well. So with that, we will turn it over for questions.
Enforcement Council, questions or comments?
Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Michael Rowland, ROL A&D with the Office of Enforcement Council. We do have a couple questions for the Hollywood representatives, if that's okay. Starting on slides 8 and 9, you state that Hollywood has 2,002 slot machines and 75 table games. And on one of those slides, I believe it is slide 9, you reference June 30th, 2018 for some of the information that's provided. Just to be 100% clear, today those numbers of slots and table games represent the actual number on the floor as we sit here right now.
That's correct.
And then turning to slide 14, you present that Hollywood had 907 employees also on June 30th of 2018. Is that number still accurate?
We currently have a little over 880 current team members. We do have 35 that have been offered positions as of yesterday. We had a job fair, so hopefully by the end of today, we'll be right closer to that 900 number.
Okay, and beyond those additional 35 offerings you just mentioned, do you foresee any changes to the number of employees at Hollywood in the near future?
We do not foresee any changes in the number of team members that we have going into 2019. However, with that said, we know there's a lot of things happening within 2019 with iGaming, as well as Category 4s coming online. So we'll continue to watch that.
Okay, and regarding your benefit packages, which include health care, which you also reflect on slide 14, do all full-time positions have the opportunity to take advantage of those benefits?
Yes, all full-time team members are eligible for all of the benefits that we listed on that slide, as well as our part-time team members do receive those benefits with the exception of health insurance.
What was the last thing?
Yeah, microphone coughed when you said that.
Yeah, so
With the exception of what?
Health insurance. So part-time team members do, if you see that slide on that far right side, they do receive all those benefits with the exception of dental, vision, and medical.
Okay, one more question on slide 14. You indicate that there were 209 new hires. How many of those positions were actually new versus how many of those positions were filling previously vacated positions?
Approximately, pretty close to 100% were filling vacant positions.
Okay, and you also indicated that sports betting would add approximately 20 jobs to the facility. And now that sports betting is underway, do you still believe that number is going to be adequate?
Yes, we currently have 18 team members that are on board that's servicing directly to sports wagering. We also do have some other ancillary positions like security and food and beverage that we've had to add to support the sports book. But right now we're currently at 18.
Slide 17, you provide information about responsible gaming and the prevention of underage patrons. Regarding the transition to 1-800-GAMBLER, is that now, in your opinion, complete? And if not, when do you anticipate full transition?
So it's largely complete. So almost all of the advertising, outside advertising that we do, we've changed over to that number. There is some on-site signage that we are still looking at changing. We do expect to be in full compliance by October of 2020.
And regarding your identification verification system, which I believe you said is Veridox, when was that system fully in place, and what are some of the benefits of using it?
So that we installed the first week of November of 2017. The benefits are, number one, it can scan a much wider array of forms of identification, and it uses a three-part system to scan the identification, optical reading of the print on the ID, looking at the 2D barcode, and looking at the mag stripes. So it's a lot more sensitive than previous versions.
And you present that 261,000 plus identification checks were completed. 445 minors were denied entry in 2017. So far, how does 2018 compare?
So comparing 2018 year-to-date versus 2017, same time period, we've scanned 12% more IDs in 2018 than 2017. And the number of minors trying to enter the casino has dropped in that same time period year-to-date, down 28%. Both of which that's in line with what we've been seeing more broadly over the last couple of years as gaming matures in the state.
Okay, looking towards future growth, what's Hollywood's position on the number of slot machines, table games, the size of your gaming floor? Do you anticipate changing any of those?
So I would say we've right-sized the property. So I think I don't foresee any additional machines outside of the 2002 or the 75 tables. But as we indicated earlier, we are spending a significant amount of money in capital purchasing new slot product. Next year, we're looking at a $3.8 million purchase of slot product versus this past year, I mentioned the $1.7 million. So we are putting a lot of emphasis into driving new product.
And do you have any plans to add or remove any of the amenities at the facility?
Not to remove anything. In fact, we just spent the $3.5 million on the new eatery, so we're excited about that.
We have no further questions. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the board at this time? Go ahead.
Yes. Mr. Vista, I have a question. Of the 445 minors that were denied entry, is that mostly catching fake IDs, or what? How would you categorize that group?
A lot of it was just people they'd show up for dinner with their family, or they'd come from another state and they just didn't know. And we have giant signs there that say "Stop, must be 21."
Right. Yeah.
There are some fake IDs that we do get, and whenever we get a fake ID and the minor is turned away, our procedure is that security notifies surveillance and puts it over the security radio, so that if that person would try to go out and come in another entrance, everybody's got eyes on this person to make sure they don't get on the floor.
So the majority of these folks, it was kind of informational confusion as opposed to fake IDs? Is that a fair way of putting it?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Kathy.
My question's going to kind of the financial health and the financial outlook, and I'm going to try to, in my inarticulate way, put together 3 pieces of information that you presented, and hopefully you'll see where I'm going with this question. So Penn National is publicly traded.
Correct.
So I know from that there's always pressure when you have stockholders for continued growth. You showed us a slide of kind of the mature market that you've reached in Pennsylvania since 2014 that kind of shows steady but flat revenue, so to speak. And then you also talked about outside of this property, but it goes to the financial health of the company, that you've been expanding by having more properties, and you're up to 40. So putting all those pieces together, can you give me an assessment of your market in Pennsylvania, your longevity, your health in Pennsylvania, given the kind of maturity and flatness of the Pennsylvania property vis-a-vis all those other factors? You see where I'm going?
Sure, I'll try and answer that. Sure. First of all, the property is very successful, and it has been for the 10 years we've been operating. The cash-on-cash returns, the EBITDA margins, any yardstick that industry individuals look at, the property has performed extremely well. So we remain very pleased with the property's performance. Yeah, you're correct. The market has flattened out. You know, the Pennsylvania market in general has flattened out, with some exceptions. There's a lot of competition. There's competition from other states, as you know, new offerings that don't affect us in New York, but in Maryland, certainly. It's an arms race always. West Virginia gets sports betting, Pennsylvania gets sports betting. Historically, that was the case with tables, of course. And to the Commonwealth's credit, they've stayed ahead or with the competition throughout. So we're getting competition from other states. Frankly, we're also getting a lot of competition from within the Commonwealth, as you well know. It's not, the core business, operating a casino, is certainly under competitive pressures within the Commonwealth as well. Having said all that, the financial performance of the property remains very, very satisfactory, very strong. The returns continue to be, very acceptable. We're very pleased. We're reinvesting in the property, as we've talked a lot about, with food and beverage offerings, with additional slot product, certainly with sports betting, to keep the property fresh, to keep the property competitive with other casinos within the Commonwealth and others in the Mid-Atlantic region. So we'll continue to do that. We haven't been shy to do that over the years. And, we have some other thoughts about opportunities for reinvestment in the property over the coming years as well.
So, I don't see if I can put it. So, would it be fair for somebody looking at the legalized gaming industry to conclude, unlike a manufacturing plant that there's still a demand for automobiles, for example, but they could be built anyway. If there is still a demand for legalized gaming, you need to be where the customers are. So I'm kind of looking at not only the mature market of you, but kind of the maxed out potentially, whether we're at the maxed, still question there, the maxed out potential of Pennsylvania customers. But is it fair for me to assume that customer demand is what drives whether you're here versus whether you're in some other jurisdiction?
Well, to be clear, we're not going anywhere. We're very pleased with the operation. That's our home base. I've talked about our fact that we're the only publicly traded company based in Pennsylvania. We're committed to that property. Sure, it's competitive, but that's typical. We operate in 19 jurisdictions. There are no layups in any of these jurisdictions. They're all tough, competitive markets. We operate and compete against a lot of other good companies. We all have the same slot machines. We have to differentiate ourselves. So we look at ways to do that through partnering with Fabio Viviani, for instance, who is, I think, going to be a great partner for us, through team member engagement, which India talked a lot about. So differentiating ourselves on service. Certainly reinvestment in the property is important, but we're gonna stay competitive in this market and throughout the country. Part of the strength of this company is that we have tremendous geographic diversity or diversification, and so if one area of the country has an economic downturn, Chevrolet announced plant closings this week, as you know.
That's what I was thinking of.
One of them is near our property in Youngstown, Ohio. That's not going to be great for us there, but we're a big company with 40 other properties that can weather if one property has a bad year or a bad stretch. So that's the strength of the company. We have deep pockets. We have access to the capital markets. We can spend $3 million on slot product. Some of our competitors can't do that. So the commitment to the property, to the Commonwealth, as you know, with the Meadows, with the Cat 4s, with the truck stops, with sports betting, iGaming, we're here to stay. This is our home base, and as I said earlier, we're very, very excited to continue to do business here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So I'm not sure who would answer. Does your marketing department ever push out a text, an email, some communication to customers, whatever level, come in within the hour, 5 hours, 10 hours, receive X free play, free toaster, a free haircut, any announcement that
I think the reason we're looking at each other is we have to be very careful with email and text, and the reason for that is
don't get hung up. I don't want to ask something specific that you're going to answer to that specific term. No, don't use marketing department.
I think
in-house advertising. Let me finish. In-house advertising, outside advertising. Whether it's in your facility or not, does any notification go out to a customer, a potential customer, an existing customer of come in a certain time frame and receive something of value?
Well, the short answer is yes. So if we have a gift giveaway or something else, we do utilize e-marketing or social aspects to market and notify the customers that there is a potential opportunity or there is a marketing program that they can take advantage of.
I just want to add one item, because I think this is something that I think you're going to see and I think staff is going to need to engage with the industry generally. But with the advent of internet gaming, be it straight casino games or sports wagering, I think it becomes more and more important to use emails, perhaps texts as tools. And we are all sort of wrestling with how do we do that yet not run afoul of marketing to folks who are on the restricted list or self-excluded list. Because the problem I think that we're seeing, and literally this is something that's being worked on real time, at least internally on our property, is with respect to excluded gaming, those data points are not always collected right now. It's more names and things of that nature in terms of identifiers. So I just wanted to sort of put that overlay onto you that at least on gaming marketing, it's a challenge that we're all going to have to work through and be very careful with.
Does your organization globally, again, all the factors that I mentioned, ever send out a communication, a text? Again, all those factors that I mentioned for free slot play. So come in within a certain amount of time and receive free slot play.
So I would say, not that I'm aware of, the majority of what we send in free slot play comes from our DM, our database, direct mail. So we do.
Go ahead.
So, and when we do send these to our players, these are players that have, I guess, opted in, that are part of our database. So if somebody were to be excluded, they would be excluded from the database, so would their emails. So we do not, as a property here, we don't go out and purchase just lists, email lists.
No, I understand that they opted in. My question is, if I opted in, would I ever receive a text that says, come in within a certain amount of time and receive free slot play or something of value?
Commissioner,
if so, can I see it?
First of all, we generally don't use texting for that function.
Any communication?
I'm not aware.
Any text, any email,
Emails,
any Twitter?
Yes. So, significant amount of our database customers have indicated they would prefer us to communicate them via email.
You're missing my point.
Okay.
Regardless, I opted in. I opted in to some mode of communication. Again,
Yes.
don't get caught up on terms that I'm using because I don't want to not use a term and you answer negatively. Any communication to an existing customer or a potential customer, whether they opted in or not, that says come in within a certain amount of time, an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, and receive free slot play or something of value.
There may be an offer, to try to answer your question, there may be an offer that says come in next Tuesday and receive a buffet offer or a 2-for-1 or a free buffet. There may be an email communication that says here is your monthly free slot play offer. But to your question about a specific time, yes, maybe the food offer is for Tuesday at lunch. Maybe the free slot play offer is for the month of December or the week of the 3rd through the 10th. But as to come in and between 11 and noon, no, I don't think we do that in any of our properties.
Okay.
If I could follow up. Not talking about Penn National, just generally, there is a concern on this board in the area of minors being left in cars and such things, where we have some anecdotal information that some of these people who are pulling in the parking lot, going into the casino for an hour or two, and leaving minors unattended are people that are responding to a request like get a free set of sunglasses, $100 of free play. So it's kind of a spontaneous decision that some parent is making that results in children being left. I'm getting right to the heart of it, I think. You may have had other things on your mind.
No, you're right.
But,
You're right.
But this is a great concern to this board. It's one thing to be doing promotional stuff, but some of this is running the risk of encouraging people to engage in really irresponsible behavior. I'm not saying you've done it. This is kind of like just a warning shot. This is something that the board has been talking about and is very concerned about. That's Sean was setting the base for what's underneath the question. And I don't know if you have any comments about this, but it's something of great concern to us. Whether you haven't had much of it, that's wonderful. But a big warning that this is encouraging certain kind of behavior that is really troublesome.
Mr. Chair, we take that issue very seriously. It's part of our responsible gaming program at all of our properties. So that starts with security patrols of the parking garage and the parking lots, looking for all kinds of things. But certainly that's one of the things we look for is unattended children left in the car, or even on the property. So our security department surveillance. It's a significant priority for them. We don't want that. That doesn't reflect well on the industry, certainly. And we take great steps to identify that if it is going on. And when we find the parent guilty of such a thing, pretty severe action is taken up to and including, in most cases, a lifetime ban or a significant ban from the property.
I have no doubt that would be your motivation.
Sure.
What I'm trying to do on behalf of the board is raise a concern that may not be apparent, which is you've got a security department looking at the parking lot, and you got a promotional department trying to get people to come. And to think about how those two things fit together, whether you've thought about it or not, is something that we're starting to see that we're very concerned about. That some of the promotional activities that some of our casinos are doing, whether by design or not, have a negative consequence, intended or unintended, to encourage very irresponsible behavior.
I want to get to your answer, but I do have to give you a little more detail because I want to get it right for you. So, as a company, I sit on the company's corporate compliance committee and responsible gaming committee. And every quarter, we go through significant amount of data from all of the properties looking at such issues. I got to say, we have instances of bad parenting, unfortunately, on occasion at our properties. But I can honestly tell you that, first of all, as a company, we don't tend to send, as I said earlier, we don't tend to send offers out that say, come in between this time to get something. It's more of a week or a day or a meal period. So that's number one. Number two, as I look at the data every quarter where we have had examples of bad parenting, unfortunately, I can honestly tell you, I don't see it written up that this parent came in to collect their what did you say, their free haircut or their
sunglasses,
their sunglasses.
Nobody wants a haircut at a casino.
Someone said that. So I did hear that. They're coming in. They made a bad decision to come in and gamble, and it wasn't a particular event that drove them in. It was just a bad decision. So I hope that helps.
Just so you know, because we have seen such cases.
Okay.
Okay. In the time I've been here, we have had those cases where somebody said, I just ran in because I was going in because I had to pick up my sunglasses or whatever. And then, there's the slot machine. And an hour later, the 3-year-old is found in the car. Okay. That's not good for anybody here. Okay. And it's more of like, I say a warning. What I'm trying to say is think about the interconnections between your promotional activities and some of the security activities, which may not be apparent in any organization that has silos. Well, we caught the guy in the parking lot. Well, maybe the guy's kids are in the parking lot because of something your promotional department did. That's really what's on our mind.
Well, and now that I understand exactly what you were looking for, so at the Hollywood Casino Penn National, we do not send out a text or an email saying, if you come in within the next hour or the next, whatever, we do not do that. So as John indicated, our emails are really intended to get out in front of the consumer ahead of time so they can plan their calendars, so they know that there's a giveaway next Wednesday that they can choose to come in. But yeah, we do not do that. So.
And I could just add from a regulatory standpoint, all of our promotions are submitted to the board for review at least 48 hours prior to the promotion. So we couldn't even do one of these flash email sale type things.
Okay. Are there other questions?
Yeah, just, good. Sorry.
So I'm going to take a turn from a different direction. So you talked about the properties and the upkeep and the expansions and all the glitz and glamour. But one of the reasons, I'm from the Department of Ag, one of the reasons that you exist is because of the horse racing on the backside. And so really my question is just as a kind of a overview is, what type of conversations do you have about the racetracks, the upkeep, and that sort of thing that continues to keep your whole operation in place, because that's where you become that Category 1 was because of horse racing. So my real question is, and I realize that this is the Gaming Control Board, but just as a property, how do you look to maintain and upkeep and even from the standpoint of the horses, the jockeys, and so on? Do you have those kinds of conversations in your meetings when you're talking about property and property assessment?
I'll start and you can jump in. As I'm sure you know, we committed when we built the property to spend $10 million on the backside, making backside improvements, and it was a multi-year plan. And the input as to how to spend that money came from the Horsemen's group, from the HCPN. And we worked with them over the years to determine where that money went. And as you know, the vast majority of that money went to new barns and repair of barns, but mostly new barns. But we addressed a lot of issues on the backside. So, there's never enough money to fix the backside. As you know, it's an ongoing challenge to keep up with the infrastructure back there, but we have made a significant commitment. Dan and his team meet with the HCPN on a regular basis. We talk about subjects such as the track conditions, safety for the horses and for the jockeys, and also backside. What else can we do to continue to put money on the backside? So there is a process there. There's a regular dialogue. Do we always agree? Absolutely not. We try to balance the business part of it with doing the right thing back there. I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I think that's good, John. But yeah, matter of fact, we just met with the Horsemen's Association. It was 2 weeks ago, and had a nice roundtable. And we actually had the discussion that we probably need to increase the amount of times that we meet. Whether we have issues or not, but just as a general conversation. But in general, we feel at the property, we feel like we have a very solid, very close relationship, and we communicate back and forth. And as John said, we don't always agree, but most of the time we do. So,
I think also, if I could just quickly put on the record, last month, as you know, we were in front of the Horse Racing Commission to specifically talk about the integration of the sports book onto the horse racing side of the property, which quite frankly was, although it was a good decision for us, was also consistent with, I believe, what the Commission and Secretary Redding wanted to see. So we fully integrated it onto that side. We've made that investment, and I think Alex could offer just a quick snapshot. We've already seen some uptake in terms of horse racing wagers. So we have directly seen the certain symbiotic relationship, as I think it was described in some correspondence from the Secretary, which directly benefits the horse racing operation.
Yes, so since we opened on the 15th, unfortunately that weekend with the snow, we weren't able to do live racing. But when we came back this past week, there's just a lot more energy, activity, and life up in that sportsbook simulcast theater. And you're just naturally having people cross over who are there to play sports bets and maybe never came to the property before. They'll place a horse wager as well, and vice versa. We did see some good numbers last Friday night, and then we're just watching it from now because, again, it's only been a couple of days. But as you saw when you toured last night, there's just a new vitality up there in that area.
Mr. Ryan, just very quickly, something I thought I picked up last night, there were some presentations that folks made and then a lot of informal conversation. It was a very interesting visit and view. And that is the profile of your sports bettors versus the profile of the historical folks that have come there for table games and for slots. Can you differentiate, and is one simpatico with the other? And Alex said they might stop off and bet on a horse if they're upstairs, but tell me just a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think generally overall, most of the simulcast folks were pleased because of the additions that we made. We have more food offerings now available to everybody. We have enhanced televisions, etc. And they have options as well. So we have the options for the entire fourth level for simulcast as well. So the interactions have worked well, I think, what is the most interesting component in that room is the demographics. So there is a little bit of a younger skewed demographic that's coming into that room, which is actually really nice to see. And on Saturday night, if you're in the sports book on a Saturday night, there's a lot of cheering and so the things that you normally
some groaning.
That's right, and some of that too. Yes.
It is entertainment.
Yes, it is. But definitely a different, definitely a little bit younger.
And so they're not folks who have kind of been customers you see before. They were downstairs and playing slots or games. So it's a
completely new customer base.
Sure. Okay. That's good to know and good to hear.
Commissioner Logan, did you have another question?
Just to follow up on the sports book, what I saw last night, it's a room this size, and I saw that you had kind of half the seats smoking, half not smoking. But if I'm smoking here, Max, Dan, and Paul smell it over there in the non-smoking. Any plan to improve the air quality system or purify? It was no matter what section you went into, you smelled it, and there was only, I think, one person smoking in there last night. Just such a confined space.
Yeah, so we'll always look into that situation. We're very aware of that. We've made some changes. For example, we do not allow cigar smoking in that area, which was very common at one time. But again, that area was a simulcast area at first, and it was always set up smoking and non-smoking. So one of the things we wanted to do when we first came into this is obviously we didn't want to upset the folks that have been utilizing that room for several years. So I think it's, to your point, it's just something that we need to be monitoring and just watching and see how that room evolves.
Okay. Other questions? I do have one area that you touched on twice. Just need to be publicly educated, but you made several references to truck stops and VGTs. Would you talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm not sure where to start, but we are involved in the VGT business, and the company is Marquee by Penn. So we are currently, we have applications from some of the partners establishments that we've been able to have contracts with. And those are, so far right now, the terms are 5-year terms with the partners that we have. So we're looking at, based on PGCB and approval of the establishments, the hope is that sometime in the first quarter of next year, we could start seeing some of these VGT, these truck stops, which have 5 slot machines at each location. We are partnering with them as it relates to providing the slot product, providing the surveillance, working with Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board. Again, they will, I can't speak for them, but I understand that they will go out and do a site visit to make sure that each establishment meets the requirements to be a licensed VGT operator. So that's kind of where we're at. So we're kind of in the infancy stage where we're still trying to get more applications.
At this time, how many, I know I can find this out elsewhere, but I think it's also useful putting it on public record.
Yeah.
How many different truck stops are you either in contract with or close to being in contract with in the state right now?
Wow.
That's why I phrased it that way.
Yeah, I know. So I could say we're anywhere between we're anywhere.
I think just for plainly a competitive position, would you care very much if we submitted that separately, not in the public forum
Some of it
yet?
I would take separately, but there must be parts of this that is already a matter of public record. And if you can tell me that, that would be useful.
Yeah, I don't think any of it is public record because the two establishments that we actually have contracts with, I do not believe they've had filed an application into the state. So that's why it's probably not public record at this time.
Now let me rephrase the question a little bit and see whether Adrian thinks this is okay in terms of your competitive concerns. Do you have a budget or a projection of what you're trying to accomplish in 2019? What's a goal or something? Something so I know whether this is bigger than a bread box, smaller than a house sort of thing. That's what I'm trying to understand.
We have some very preliminary thoughts. This is very, very early on. It's very hard to do projections without knowing how many of these entities we're going to be partnering with. So it's the answer really is no. Okay. As far as financial projections, I mean, we think we understand what each one of these entities can do for us, but we don't.
Just to help you, I'm not looking for the financial projections. I'm looking for a much more basic thing, which is, and if it's inappropriate or you have no idea, those are fine answers. But are we expecting that by the end of the year you're going to have 20 truck stops, 3 truck stops, 300 truck stops?
Honestly, we don't know. It's dependent on signing agreements with the owners and then them getting licensed, and that's a big if. So we honestly don't know. This is not like opening a Cat 4 or a sports book, which is some certainty involved with it. This is very, very uncertain to us as it evolves.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Mr.
Enforcement
Chairman.
Council, comments, questions?
The Office of Enforcement Council doesn't have a public presentation. However, at this time, OEC would like to amend its exhibit list to introduce into the record in addition to OEC Exhibit 1, which is the Uniform Crime Reporting System report for Hollywood Casino. That amendment includes the statistics for September and October of 2018. And secondly would be the addition to OEC Exhibit number 8, which is a copy of the Office of Enforcement Council warning letters issued to Hollywood along with the responses submitted. The amendment includes one additional warning letter with a submitted response, and it's been marked as confidential pursuant to 4 PACS Section 1206 F1. Finally, Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association, LLC, doing business as Hollywood Casino, along with its affiliates and principals, filed renewal applications with the board. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its background investigation related to these applications. Hollywood fully cooperated with BIE during the course of the background investigation. BIE did not identify any information that would preclude a finding of suitability or financial fitness for Hollywood, its principals, or its affiliates. The background investigation reports have been submitted as part of the suitability report to the board for consideration, and the Office of Enforcement Council would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Any response?
I just think administratively, we'd like to move into the record our PowerPoint for today's presentation, and thank everyone for their time and the efforts of the staff on this renewal application, and respectfully request that our renewal application be granted. So thank you for the
Did you ask to move something into record, did you?
Yes, just the presentation.
So moved. Well, thank you all for coming, and
Thank you.
nice to know you decided that you'd like to continue to have your license. You could have come in here and said you've had enough.
Yeah, we could have just said that, right?
That's right. It would have been a much shorter hearing. Okay. Thank you very much. Next up, Stadium Casino. Petition for extension of time to make slot machines available. If the petitioners can come forward. Morning.
Morning.
As always, anyone who's going to be speaking, please should make sure they state and spell the name for the court reporter, and any non-attorney witness should stand and be sworn.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
I do.
Good morning again, Chairman and Commissioners. May it please the Board, my name is Mark Stewart with Eckert Siemens, appearing on behalf of Stadium Casino, LLC. With me is a principal of Stadium Casino, Joseph Weinberg, who is also the CEO of Cordish Global Gaming, among various other hats that he wears. We are before you this morning on a petition requesting approval of the extension that is authorized under Section 1210A2 of the Gaming Act for the requirement to have 1,500 slot machines up and running within 12 months of the issuance of a slot machine license. We have a presentation for you today, and Mr. Weinberg will lead that.
Well, good morning. My name is Joe Weinberg, W-E-I-N-B-E-R-G. I'm managing partner of Stadium Casino, LLC, and pleased to be here this morning. What I thought I'd do is give you just a quick introduction, because it's been a while, of our company. The Cordish Companies, we are a 100-year-old privately held company. We, in addition to gaming, we also are major developers of all kinds of non-gaming assets throughout the country. We do major high-profile mixed-use urban developments throughout the country, many sports-anchored developments where we work with Major League sports franchises throughout the country, office, residential. In gaming, we have developed 3 of the most successful casinos in the country, the Hard Rock Hotel Casino in Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood, Florida, as well as the Hard Rock Hotel Casino in Tampa, Florida, and the Live Casino Hotel in the Baltimore, Washington corridor. Our projects have won many Urban Land Institute awards of excellence. In fact, we've been awarded for our projects more than any other developer in the world. Our projects today welcome over 50 million customers each year, and we really are see ourselves as being in the experience business. We're all about creating, whether it's gaming, non-gaming, a world-class experience for our customers. To give you a quick just kind of history on the project in Philadelphia and licensure, we were originally awarded our license in November of 2014. Almost immediately, our license was appealed by several competitors, and the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania gave its final notice of discontinuance of that appeal at the end of 2017. So we paid our $50 million license fees for slots in November of 2017. Our license was initially issued in December of 2017. In January of 2018, we bid on one of the Cat 4 licenses in Western Pennsylvania, which we won. And then we paid our table games license in June of 2018. On the development side, again, we were issued our license at the end of 2017. So immediately we got to work. And in January of 2018, we applied for and received our zoning and use registration for the gaming use in the city of Philadelphia. We closed on our property in January of 2018 at 900 Packer Avenue, and I'll walk you through kind of that site just to refamiliarize everybody. We obtained a demolition permit for existing buildings on that site in April of 2018, and we have a typo here, but we submitted construction drawings to the city of Philadelphia in June.
Your slide.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. In June of 2018, we submitted complete construction drawings to the city of Philadelphia for permitting. And for a project of this size, it's thousands of sheets of plans and specs, and we have entered that into the record. And if you all are looking for something to do at some point, you can walk through those thousands of plans. We received in the city of Philadelphia, there's a requirement that you have a certain amount of public art that's part of your projects. So we presented that and got approval of that from the city of Philadelphia in September of 2018, and we're expecting our final building permit momentarily. The initial budget for the project was $450 million, and the current budget is $700 million. And I'll walk you through what our thinking was on that and kind of the transition, our thinking of the project. Our budget for the Cat 4 facility is $150 million, and we've got $180 million in equity that is invested to date. This is the site for the Philadelphia site in the Stadium District. We acquired what was the former Holiday Inn right at Packer Avenue and Darien and 10th. And then you see visuals of the Holiday Inn building that was on the site. This was the original design for the project, in which we were preserving the Holiday Inn and redeveloping that building. And if I have well, if you see, the problem that we saw with the Holiday Inn is that it sits right in the middle of the site. And so as we were getting into detailed plans for the project, we just were not happy with having that building sitting in the middle of the site. It didn't allow us to really have an ideal gaming floor layout for our amenities. It was really more of a hindrance to the project than an asset. And this is the design for the project, in which we're tearing down the Holiday Inn, building a brand new world-class hotel on the site. This elevation that you see is looking from Packer and Darien streets. You also see a close-up of the porte cochere entrance off of Darien. Again, you see the porte cochere, and then the second visual is looking from 10th and Packer, back of the building. Building's finished on all sides, with a beautiful metal cladding. We also have a 2,700 car parking garage that is attached to the facility. So it really provides the ideal kind of customer experience in terms of coming to the facility, parking, be able to come into the facility, not having to go out into the weather. We're also surrounded by thousands of surface parking spaces as well. So this is our gaming floor and entry into our lobby off the porte cochere, and this shows that now we have a wide open gaming floor that we're able to anchor around the gaming floor with amenities and create much more visual excitement for the space. These are the hotel interiors. And again, very upscale interiors. We just opened a live hotel at our Maryland facility. We're building a live hotel as part of our Texas Live project next to the Texas Rangers Stadium. This room we've actually fully mocked up, and it's really a beautiful amenity. Fitness room in the hotel. And again, our vision for this project is that this becomes part of what will really be one of the most unique sports, entertainment, gaming, hospitality destinations in the country. This site is the only place in the country where 4 major league franchises play in one location. As part of that, we also have significant recording artists that are playing in the district. We have an existing entertainment complex, Xfinity Live, that's part of this district that we will co-market with the casino, and we're expanding those amenities as well. So we really see this as a sports, gaming, entertainment, hospitality destination that will be very unique in the country. In terms of the restaurant and dining amenities, this is an upscale steakhouse that will be part of the project. We have a very hip, kind of casual restaurant with an Asian design flair. A marketplace that evokes the great food markets in the city of Philadelphia, like Reading Market. A sports bar, which will now be also a sports book. So we had already programmed a great sports entertainment venue as part of the casino, and this will also take on our sports book facilities. From a scheduling standpoint, we are looking at finishing up demo, relocation of some utilities, end of December through March of 2019, starting full-scale construction with foundations by April of next year, and looking at completion of the project at the end of 2020. So just in summary, we're really look at this as a world-class integrated development. This is a very large scale in terms of a first phase. It's a very large scale facility with gaming, parking, as well as hotel as part of the initial development. We are making a major investment in the Commonwealth, both in Philadelphia as well as with the Cat 4 in Western PA. $700 million in Philadelphia and $150 million in Westmoreland County. We have $180 million of equity invested to date, so we're obviously very excited about the opportunities here in Pennsylvania. And we've really been on a rapid development on this project. We've gone from licensure to full plans, started demo permits within about 11-month period, which is moving pretty quickly, particularly in the city of Philadelphia. It's not always the easiest to work your way through permits in that period of time. So happy to answer any questions you have about the project.
Thank you. Enforcement Counsel.
With regard to the demolition of the Holiday Inn, I know initially in 2014 when we were having the hearings, you anticipated a 15 to 18 month construction time. Does the demolition add a little bit more time with regard to getting the facility up and running?
The demolition does, and also the fact that we're building a ground-up hotel versus renovating an existing hotel, so we have to build the complete court shell for the hotel as well, so that has added time to the construction schedule.
And is there an anticipated demolition date where you implode the hotel, or
Yeah,
tear it
well,
down?
there's a process where we have to relocate some cell towers that are on the hotel, which we'll do by January, and then February, March, it's not going to be a television event implosion. We're actually taking it down by, by hand machine. So that's about a 7-8 week process, which will put us into beginning of April for foundations.
Okay, all right. And with regard to your permits, I know that you are waiting on a building permit. Are there any other permits that you need in order to start construction other than that building permit?
Only the building permit.
Okay. And once you receive that building permit, you anticipate being able to complete everything by December 2020, hopefully, without any unforeseen circumstances?
Correct. Because obviously we want it done as quickly as possible, because the longer it takes, the more it costs us. So we're pushing to get it done as quickly as possible.
Okay. And are there any things right now that you see as barriers to you completing that project?
Nope, not at this time. I mean, we're fully designed and have our contractor on board. We've already have the plans out bid. We've started all of our minority outreach programs for the project, so we're already in full movement.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
I was looking at your construction schedule, and I was also in light of the kind of mock-up of the building or buildings, and it looked like, although it looked like there were 3 different buildings. There was the hotel, there was the casino, and there was the parking garage. And then and I could see, obviously, especially in the early phases, with foundation utilities, all that stuff, why it needs to move together. But then when you get to the fit out or the finishing, it seemed like I guess they're all moving together, and to a certain extent, the casino is last up, so to speak, for lack of a better way of saying it. Maybe I'm not reading that right. I guess my concern is how much flexibility there is in the schedule if things get complicated for the casino to move ahead before the hotel is finished or before the final part of the parking garage is finished.
Well, the construction moves simultaneously, so we work from one end of the site and our building to the other. So once we get to a certain, about the midpoint of the site, we can then, while we're still moving forward on the core and shell construction, we can then start on the interior fit out. And so that's how the project is phased.
Mm-hmm. So is the casino the front end of that fit out?
The casino is the front end of the interior finishes, and the hotel will have all the core and shell done, and it should be when we finish the casino fit out, we're still moving on the interior fit out of the hotel.
And you mentioned your Westmoreland site. And where my head is going, it's no secret. I'm thinking you can't have a Cat 4 if you didn't have a Cat 2 license, right? So I'm just trying to figure out, how far ahead of one the other one is.
Well, we haven't even been awarded the license on the Cat 4. Okay. So we're way ahead on the Cat 2. So as you know, we'll be seeing you again next week in Hempfield Township. So we have to get the final award of license. We have to do plans there. Now, it's a much simpler
right.
That's
kind of, maybe I was going a little bit too far ahead, but
there, because it's an interior renovation. We're in a existing mall. All the infrastructure is in. We don't have to put in any site work at all. It's only an interior fit out. But we have to get past square one first on the Cat 4.
And I guess where my head is, and maybe you're far enough along to assure me that this is a foolish thought, but having been a former Philadelphian, I've seen this project and other ones, even kind of at late stages, maybe this is later, kind of fall apart. And I guess when you get that building permit in hand, that's when I can breathe a sigh of relief that we're not going to fall apart again.
No, we're at the final stage. We've been working on it hard. This is obviously a very important project for the city of Philadelphia. This will be the largest construction project now that the Comcast headquarters has been completed. This is the largest project in the city of Philadelphia. So, we're working very closely with the building trades, and, this is a very important project to the city. So we have no concern about, not that I don't understand your your comment, but we have no concern that that's an issue. If anything, they're pushing us as much as we're pushing ourselves.
Good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? You have a presentation or comments?
We don't have a presentation. However, Mr. Chairman, I did submit with the concurrence of Stadium and the representatives a joint proposed order. We submitted that order to Chief Counsel's office. We are requesting that the board implement that order. We're available if there are any questions. I have reviewed the designs, the plans. I do have the design book if the board would like to review that design book. It's very detailed. I'm cautiously optimistic that we will finally get our Category 2 casino in Philadelphia. The Cordish Group has been very enthusiastic, and since we filed our answer, there has been a lot of movement behind the scenes on this project. So I'm cautiously optimistic that things are moving forward in the desired manner, and we want to serve as more to help them along the way as a deterrence. And so we too have been pushing them, and they have accepted that push very positively. And I think things are finally moving in the direction we all want them to move in.
Okay. If there's no further questions or comments, yes,
Mr. Chairman, just a couple administrative items. As was mentioned and alluded to, we did file certain confidential information of record under this docket, which was too voluminous to utilize as an exhibit. But we would identify as Stadium Exhibit 1 a DVD that is in the record, and as Mr. Weinberg said, contains over 6,000 pages of construction specifications and drawings, should any of you like to review them. As Mr. Petrie
seeking to move that into evidence?
Pardon me?
Are you seeking to move that into evidence?
We will be, Your Honor.
Okay.
I also wanted to identify Stadium Exhibit Number 2, which is the project design book for the project.
Okay.
That is also with the Office of Hearings and Appeals.
Okay. Take that as a motion and
Thank you. And we do have a motion for confidentiality pending
we will
as to both items.
So moved. The board will take this up slightly later this morning. And at this moment, I think we're going to take a brief break, a 5-minute break.
Okay.
Chairman, we would also need the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Oh, we're ready to roll.
Ready to roll.
Okay. Next, we'll take consideration of a motion to approve the minutes and transcripts of our September 12th and October 3rd meetings. May I have such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approves the September 12th and October 3rd, 2018 meeting minutes and transcripts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted. Executive Director Kevin O'Toole.
Good morning, Chairman Barish. Good morning, members of the board. I have one item for my executive report today. It'll be a short discussion, and that item pertains to the board's insurance policies. The board's directors and officers liability insurance, its employment practices liability insurance, and its excess management liability insurance policies are due for annual renewal on December the 5th of 2018. These policies have been reviewed by our Office of Chief Counsel. Additionally, these policies are secured in consultation with the Department of General Services, Bureau of Risk and Insurance Management, and are authorized by Section 1202 of the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act. So at this time, I'm requesting a motion of the board to approve the renewal of these insurance policies. Thank you.
May I have such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the renewal of the board's insurance coverage, which will become effective December 5th, 2018, as described by the Executive Director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Thank you, Kevin. Danette Bixler-George, Director of Human Resources. No, still do it. Good morning.
I was trying to
We're
figure
still
out if
there.
it was still morning or not.
still
So
there.
good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. The Office of Human Resources has one motion for your consideration today relative to the hiring of 4 individuals. First, Derek Altman, who has been selected as a forensic accountant under the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement. He has completed the interview process, background investigation, and drug screening, and is recommended for hire by the Bureau Director, Paul Morrow. Second is Angela Alulivas, who has been selected also as a forensic accountant under the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement. She too has completed the interview process, background investigations, and drug screening, and is recommended for hire by Director Paul Morrow. Third, Ellen Geedy, who has been selected as a compliance examiner under the Bureau of Gaming Operations. She too has completed all the background process, and she is recommended for hire by the Director Paul Resch. Finally, Mr. Spencer Otto, who has been selected as a compliance examiner, again under the Bureau of Gaming Operations. He has completed the process, background process as well, and is also recommended for hire by the Director Paul Resch. Unless you have any questions, I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the hiring actions as indicated.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the applicants for hire as proposed by the Human Resources Director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted. Thank you,
Thank
Danette. Doug Sherman, Office of Chief Counsel.
I think we may be just crossing the noon time, so good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. The board has 3 petitions before it for consideration. 2 of those were heard earlier today during public hearings, and the remaining petition will be decided on the record by agreement of the parties. In each of the matters, the board has, in advance of this meeting, been provided with all of the documents filed of record. The first petition before the board is that of Downs Racing. It's their petition seeking the issuance of 2 interactive gaming certificates. As the board's aware, Section 13B12 of the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act mandates strict timelines for the board to consider petitions seeking interactive gaming certificates which have been filed by slot machine licensees. As a result, the licensees are at varying levels of preparedness when the board takes up a given matter for consideration. For this reason, when the board has approved an interactive gaming petition, it is not authorizing the licensee to commence the operation of interactive gaming at that time, but rather in each case, the board has placed a number of conditions on the casinos and their operators which will need to be fulfilled prior to actually commencing operations. With that explanation, and that OEC does not object to the petition of Downs Racing, the matter is ready for the board's consideration of motion to grant the 2 game certificates to Downs Racing.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve Downs Racing LP's petition for authorization to conduct interactive gaming as described by the Office of Chief Counsel and with the conditions to be outlined in the board's order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next petition before the board is Stadium Casino's request for an extension of time to make slot machines available. Stadium is requesting a 36-month extension from the current deadline of December 13th of 2018 to make the slot machines available at its Category 2 facility. This is the matter which was just heard before by the board, along with the plans and time frame outlined by Stadium. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to the granting of a 24-month extension at this time, subject to conditions relating to project milestones which have been outlined in OEC's answer. The board heard from both Stadium and OEC, and the matter is now appropriate for the board's consideration of a motion.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve Stadium Casino LLC's petition for extension of time to make slot machines available in part, and that a 24-month extension period be granted subject to conditions which will be outlined in the board's order.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
And the final petition is Jack Lindemann's request for removal from the board's involuntary exclusion list. In July of 2016, Mr. Lindemann, who was 19 years old at the time, attempted to enter Mount Airy Casino by providing a false identification. He was not permitted on the gaming floor and was permanently evicted from Mount Airy. Subsequently, the Office of Enforcement Counsel entered into a consent agreement with Mr. Lindemann, placing him on the board's involuntary exclusion list until at least his 22nd birthday. That 22nd birthday occurred October 9th of this year, and he, having now reached the age of 22, is requesting removal from the exclusion list. OEC has no objection, and it would be appropriate for the board to now consider a motion to remove him.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve Jack Lindemann's petition for removal from the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Okay, next, presenting withdrawals and reports and recommendations is Deputy Chief Counsel Steve Cook.
Good afternoon. The board has received several unopposed petitions to withdraw the applications or surrender the credentials of the following individuals or entities: Michael Prescott, VF Colonial GP LLC, Boyd TCV GP LLC, Kimberly Ward, Kevin Sheehan, Lawrence David Flynn, and Constance Purcell James. The Office of Enforcement Counsel has no objection to any of these withdrawals and surrenders, and as a result, if the board chooses to grant the request, it would be doing so without prejudice to any of the requesters, and all these matters are ready for a motion.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board issue the order to approve the withdrawal and surrendering as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next before the board for consideration are 6 reports and recommendations received from the Office of Hearings and Appeals. These reports and recommendations, along with the complete evidentiary record for each hearing, have been provided to the board in advance of this meeting. And additionally, in each case, the person subject to the report and recommendation has been notified that their matter would be considered by the board today. And if they so chose, they could come forward and briefly address the board. If any of the parties related to these reports and recommendations would like to address the board, they should come forward when their matter is called. The first report and recommendation before the board today pertains to David Carnevale. I know Mr. Carnevale is present in the room. I don't know if he wishes to come forward or not.
I do not. I just wanted to make my presence here.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
By way of background, on June 29th, 2017, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition requesting that Mr. Carnevale be placed in the board's involuntary exclusion list alleging that he tipped a cocktail server at Sands with a Valium tablet. Specifically, the evidence presented before the board's hearing officer showed that on December 29, 2016, while gaming at Sands, Mr. Carnevale would tip the server $20 each time she brought him a drink. At one point in the evening, Mr. Carnival gave the server a $10 bill, expressed the $10 wasn't enough, and also handed her a Valium pill which he lawfully possessed with a valid medical prescription. The server attempted to return the pill, but he would not take it back. She reported the incident to security, and thereafter the Pennsylvania State Police escorted Mr. Carnevale from the floor, charging him with delivery of a controlled substance and disorderly conduct. Mr. Carnevale was charged criminally with those charges, admitted into an ARD program, which he successfully completed, and the criminal record has subsequently been expunged. After hearing all of the evidence presented, the report and recommendation issued by the hearing officer recommends that he not be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list. In reaching this conclusion, the hearing officer reasoned that Mr. Carnevale's actions were likely an isolated lapse in judgment, unlikely to be repeated, and that is the recommendation to the board.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopts the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearing and Appeals regarding the request placement of David Carnevale on the PGCB involuntary exclusion list described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter before the board
And we appreciate your coming and presenting yourself here today, sir.
The next matter before the board is the report and recommendation pertaining to Kwan Kim. On May 10, 2018, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a petition requesting that Mr. Kim be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list, alleging that in January of 2018, he cheated while gaming at parks. The hearing in this matter was held on August 22, 2018. Despite receiving proper notice, Mr. Kim failed to appear, and the hearing was held in absentia. Office of Enforcement Counsel appeared at that hearing offering testimony and documentary evidence. Specifically, the evidence showed that while playing Baccarat, Mr. Kim bet two $500 chips on the player's hand. After losing the hand, Mr. Kim removed one of his $500 chips and left the table. Surveillance showed he then left the casino, moved his vehicle, re-entered the casino at a different entrance, cashed in the chips he had in his possession, then went to a blackjack table and bought into the blackjack game. When he realized he was being approached by security relative to his earlier conduct, Mr. Kim attempted to flee. He was ultimately apprehended and charged criminally and ultimately pled guilty to a theft-related offense. The hearing officer, hearing all this evidence, issued a report and recommendation recommending that Mr. Kim, in fact, be placed on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the placement of Kwan T. Kim on the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Malik Jones is the next report and recommendation before the board today. Mr. Jones was issued a gaming employee permit in December of 2016 and was employed as a table games dealer at the Parks Casino. On August 1st of 2018, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for an emergency suspension of Mr. Jones' gaming employee occupation permit after receiving notice that he'd been charged with theft and other theft-related offenses. As a result of these charges, the board's executive director issued an emergency order suspending Mr. Jones' gaming employee occupation permit as requested by the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The hearing was held relative to the validity of the emergency suspension on September 5th, 2018. The Office of Enforcement Counsel participated in that hearing, offering evidence. Mr. Jones did not attend the hearing. The evidence presented by OEC showed that on July 18, 2018, Mr. Jones went to the Chester holding lot for repossessed vehicles to attempt to have his car, which was repossessed earlier that morning, returned to him. While the gate to the lot was open for another vehicle to be towed in, Mr. Jones entered the lot, got into his repossessed vehicle, and drove off the lot through the surrounding fencing and against the objections of the facility manager. After hearing all of the evidence presented, the hearing officer issued his report and recommendation, recommending that the suspension of Mr. Jones' gaming employee occupation permit remain in effect until at least resolution of his criminal charges, and that is the recommendation before the board.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearing and Appeals regarding the suspension of Malik Jones Jr.'s gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Sonic Services Incorporated is the next matter before the board today. This report and recommendation was before the board at its October 31st board meeting. At that time, the board chose to pull the matter from consideration so as to give additional time, to provide itself with additional time to consider the evidence presented and the arguments of counsel. Briefly, Sonic Services, Inc. was approved as a registered gaming service provider by the board on August 10th, 2016, after Sonic entered an agreement with an affiliate of Parks Casino to provide assistance in establishing a restaurant in the form of a Lombardi's Pizzeria on the casino property. Within a few months of Sonic's approval for registration, the Bureau of Investigations of Enforcement received information from law enforcement in New Jersey alleging that Sonic Services and its sole principal, Michael Giammarino, had ties to organized crime figures. Following a year-long investigation, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a complaint to revoke Sonic's GSP registration. A hearing in this matter was held on May 15, 2018. At the conclusion of that proceeding, the hearing officer in this matter issued a report and recommendation finding that the Office of Enforcement Counsel failed to meet its burden to show that Mr. Giammarino had anything but unknowing and innocent associations with individuals involved in organized crime. As a result, the hearing officer recommended that the complaint to revoke Sonic Service Inc.'s gaming service provider registration be denied. Having the record placed before it, as well as heard the arguments of counsel, the matter is now ready for the board's consideration.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board reject the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding the revocation of Sonic Services, Inc.'s gaming service provider registration, and that Sonic Services, Inc.'s registration be immediately revoked for the reasons which will be outlined in a forthcoming board adjudication.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next report and recommendation pertains to a request for removal from the self-exclusion list. Pursuant to the findings of fact in the report and recommendation issued in this matter, on February 4th, 2015, an individual with the initials TN entered the board's office in Conshohocken and requested to be placed on the lifetime self-exclusion list. The administrative assistant who placed TN on the list testified that she conducted the mandatory interview with TN, explained the process of being placed on the list, the consequences of the exclusion period chosen, and as well as completed all the required paperwork. Thereafter, TN signed an acknowledgement form selecting a lifetime self-exclusion period. Since TN's placement on the list, he's been cited on at least 3 occasions for criminal trespass in Pennsylvania casinos. On May 14, 2018, TN filed a request to be removed from the self-exclusion list, stating that he was coerced into placing himself on the list by a friend who at that time agreed to give him a loan to help him with his business if he had placed himself on the self-exclusion list. The Office of Enforcement Counsel filed an answer objecting to TN's request. A hearing was held on August 28, 2018. The Office of Enforcement Counsel appeared. TN did not. In the report and recommendation issued subsequent to the hearing officer found that TN is not eligible to be removed from the list, as the evidence showed that he knowingly and voluntarily requested a lifetime self-exclusion.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding TN's petition for removal from the voluntary self-exclusion list as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The final report and recommendation before the board today pertains to Al Davis's petition for recovery of confiscated funds. By way of background, on July 12, 2017, the board issued an order placing Mr. Davis on the exclusion list after he took $60 in chips from the dealer's float at a gaming table in the Harrah's Philadelphia Casino. The matter currently before the board stems from an incident on July 31, 2017, where Mr. Davis was found gaming at the Sugar House Casino. Upon discovering that he was an excluded person, he was removed from the gaming floor, and $485 in chips in his possession were confiscated as winnings as authorized by the Pennsylvania Racehorse Development and Gaming Act. Mr. Davis's current petition seeks recovery of those funds. A hearing in this matter was held on July 8, 2018. The Office of Enforcement Counsel attended the hearing and put in evidence. Mr. Davis did not attend the hearing. The evidence presented by OEC showed that Mr. Davis played 8 hands of Spanish 21, placing 2 wagers on each hand prior to being identified as an excluded person at the Sugar House Casino. Mr. Davis was successful on several of his wagers, and he was paid $225 for those successful wagers. Notwithstanding that evidence, the Office of Enforcement Counsel and the hearing officer found that the entire $485 were winnings, as the board regulations define winnings as any gaming transaction, the proceeds of any gaming transaction with the casino, including the exchange of cash for chips. If the board were inclined, however, to decide that it was only appropriate to confiscate the money gained from successful wagers Mr. Davis made, it would be appropriate to return $260 of the $485 confiscated. This matter is now ready for the board's.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board adopt in part and reject in part the report and recommendation issued by the Office of Hearings and Appeals regarding Al Davis's petition recovery of confiscated funds, and that $260 be returned to Mr. Davis.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
And that concludes the matters of the Office of Chief Counsel.
Bureau of Licensing, Sean Hannon.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Before the board today will be 1 slot machine licensee renewal, 1 interactive gaming operator, 2 interactive gaming manufacturers, 2 sports wagering operators, 2 sports wagering manufacturers, 1 sports wagering supplier, 1 fantasy contest operator, 1 video gaming terminal operator, and 3 video gaming terminal establishment applicants. In addition, there will be 929 entity and individual principal and key gaming and non-gaming employee applicants. In addition, there will be the consideration of 1 gaming service provider applicant. The first matter for your consideration is the renewal of the Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Association Category 1 license. The license renewal process for this entity is now complete. In addition, the Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement has completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with the draft order and ask the board to consider the order to renew the Category 1 license.
Thank you.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grants the renewal of Mountain View Thoroughbred Racing Associates Category 1 slot operation license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next item is a conditional interactive gaming operator license for TSG Interactive Services U.S. Limited, which is the United States operating company of the Stars Group Incorporated. TSG Interactive Services U.S. Limited is a Linwood, New Jersey-based technology company. TSG Interactive Services U.S. Limited proposes to provide an interactive gaming platform and other services on behalf of at least 1 interactive certificate holder. Under the Gaming Act, the board may issue a conditional interactive gaming operator license, provided the applicant has submitted a completed application, the applicant agrees to pay the $1 million licensing fee prior to issuance of the license, and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement does not object to the license. The applicant satisfies these criteria. Prior to this meeting, I provided you with an order to conditionally license TSG Interactive Services U.S. Limited. I ask that you consider the order.
Enforcement Counsel has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant TSG Interactive Services U.S. Limited's conditional interactive gaming operator license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter for consideration is a conditional interactive gaming manufacturer license for NYX Digital Gaming USA LLC. NYX Digital Gaming USA LLC is a Las Vegas-based company that plans to offer interactive-related gaming products to interactive certificate holders. Under the board's regulations, an interactive manufacturer applicant is eligible for conditional licensure if the applicant has submitted a completed licensing application and fees, and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement does not object to the issuance of a conditional license. NYX Digital Gaming USA LLC satisfies these criteria. I have provided the board with the draft order and ask that the board consider the order to approve NYX Digital Gaming USA LLC for conditional licensure.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant NYX Digital Gaming USA LLC's conditional interactive gaming manufacturer license as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Additionally, there is the reclassification of IGT Global Solutions Corporation from an interactive gaming operator to an interactive gaming manufacturer. IGT Global Solutions Corporation was licensed as an interactive gaming operator at the last board meeting. However, a further review of the services to be provided by the company warrants a reclassification. IGT Global Services Corporation is currently licensed as a slot machine manufacturer. The reclassification would also make them an interactive gaming manufacturer. I have provided you with an order regarding this matter and ask that the board consider this order to reclassify the company.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant IGT Global Solution Corporation's license reclassification to an interactive gaming manufacturer as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next are sports wagering operator applicants Rush Street Interactive PA LLC and Sports Information Services Limited. Rush Street Interactive PA LLC is an Illinois-based company, and Sports Information Services Limited is a Malta-based company. Each propose to operate sports wagering on behalf of at least one sports wagering certificate holder. Under the Gaming Act and board regulations, the board may issue conditional sports wagering operator licenses, provided the applicants have submitted completed applications, the applicants agree to pay the $50,000 licensing fee prior to issuance of their license, and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement does not object to the licenses. The applicants satisfy these criteria. Prior to this meeting, I provided you with the order to conditionally license both Rush Street Interactive PA LLC and Sports Information Services Limited. I ask that you consider the order, beginning first with Rush Street Interactive.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the conditional sports wagering operator license of Rush Street Interactive PA LLC as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
And next would be the consideration of Sports Information Services Limited.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the conditional sports wagering operator license of Sports Information Services Limited as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration are sports wagering related licenses for companies currently licensed by the board in similar licensing classifications. These companies are eligible for the abbreviated application process. Under the board's regulations, the board may use an abbreviated process provided there is no material change in circumstances related to the licensee. First is Novamatic AG, which is applying as a sports wagering manufacturer. Novamatic AG is an Austria-based company that manufactures sports wagering devices or associated equipment. Novamatic is currently licensed by the board as a slot machine manufacturer and a table game manufacturer. I have provided you with an order to license Novamatic AG and ask that you consider the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grants the abbreviated sports wagering manufacturing license of Novamatic AG described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next applicant applying under the abbreviated process is IGT. IGT is a Nevada-based company that manufactures sports wagering devices or associated equipment. IGT is currently licensed by the board in several manufacturer categories, including slot machine manufacturer and table game manufacturer. Prior to this meeting, I provided you with an order to license IGT. I ask that you consider the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant IGT's abbreviated sports wagering manufacturer licenses described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The last applicant under the abbreviated process is Novamatic Americas Sales LLC, which is applying as a sports wagering supplier. Novamatic Americas Sales LLC is an Illinois-based company that sells and services sports wagering devices or associated equipment. Novamatic is currently licensed by the board as a slot machine manufacturer designee and table game manufacturer designee. I have provided you with an order to license Novamatic America Sales LLC and ask that you consider the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant the abbreviated sports wagering supplier license of Novamatic America Sales LLC as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next for your consideration is the Fantasy Contest Operator License for JDAD LLC, doing business as FFPC. FFPC is a New York-based company that offers season-long fantasy football leagues and contests. This is the first fantasy contest operator license to be considered by the board. The Bureau of Investigations and Enforcement have completed its investigation, and the Bureau of Licensing has provided you with a background investigation and suitability report. I have provided you with the draft order and asked that the board consider the order to approve the fantasy contest licensee.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the fantasy contest operator license of JDAD LLC, DBA Fantasy FFPC, as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The next matter for consideration is a conditional video game terminal operator license for Coleman Music and Entertainment LLC. A VGT operator owns, services, or maintains VGTs for placement and operation at truck stop establishments. Under the Gaming Act, the board may issue a conditional VGT terminal operator license provided certain criteria are met, including that the applicant has submitted a completed application, has never been convicted of a felony or a gambling law violation, is current on state taxes, and has not had a similar license denied or revoked. A preliminary review of this applicant indicates they meet these criteria. I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the conditional VGT operator license of Coleman Music and Entertainment LLC.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant the conditional video gaming terminal operator license of Coleman Music and Entertainment LLC as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next are conditional VGT establishment licenses for truck stops seeking to place VGTs in their establishments. The applicants are 54th LLC, K&H Trading LLC, doing business as Sunoco, Oasis Market Incorporated. Under the Gaming Act, the board may issue a conditional establishment license provided the applicant has never been convicted of a felony, is current on state taxes, has submitted a completed application, and has not been convicted of a gaming law violation. A preliminary review of these applicants indicate that they meet these criteria. I ask that the board consider a motion to approve the conditional VGT establishment licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the conditional video gaming terminal establishment licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is adopted.
Next are principal and key employee licenses. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a proposed order for 5 principal affiliates, 2 principal entities, and 1 principal employee. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the principal affiliates, principal entities, and principal employee licenses as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next are temporary principal and key employee licenses. Prior to the meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding the issuance of temporary licenses for 2 principals and 5 key employees. I ask that the board consider the order approving these licenses.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grant the temporary principal and key employee credentials as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next are gaming permits and non-gaming registrations. Prior to this meeting, the Bureau of Licensing provided you with a list of 663 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted temporary or full occupation permits, and 234 individuals to whom the Bureau has granted registrations under the authority delegated to the Bureau of Licensing. I ask that the board consider a motion approving the order.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board grants the gaming employee occupation permit and non-gaming employee registration as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Also for your consideration are withdrawal requests for gaming and non-gaming employees. In each case, the license, permit, or registration is no longer required. For today's meeting, I provided the board with a list of 12 gaming and 5 non-gaming employee withdrawals for approval. I ask that the board consider the order approving the list of withdrawals.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant the withdrawal of gaming and non-gaming employee applications as described by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
And finally, for your consideration is a gaming service provider registration for Telecheck Services Incorporated. The Bureau of Licensing provided you with an order regarding this company, and I ask that the board consider registering Telecheck Services, Inc. as a gaming service provider.
Enforcement Council has no objection.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant the application of Telecheck Services, Inc. for a gaming service provider registration as provided by the Bureau of Licensing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
That concludes the Bureau of Licensing matters.
Thank you very much. Office of Enforcement Counsel.
The Office of Enforcement Counsel will present 12 matters today for the board's consideration, in which will request the board's approval of 3 suspensions, 4 revocations, and 5 involuntary exclusions. The next 7 matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed complaints seeking the revocation of 2 gaming employee occupation permits, 1 gaming level 2 occupation permit, and 1 non-gaming employee registration, as well as the suspension of 2 gaming employee occupation permits and 1 non-gaming employee registration, which were issued by the board. Each complaint has been filed with the board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the person named in each complaint. The person named in the complaint failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment and properly served the same upon each named person. Therefore, the facts in each complaint are deemed admitted, all filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, we'll provide a brief summary of the facts and request the appropriate board action.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Ashley Gabriel, Gabrielle, Assistant Enforcement Counsel. Next on the agenda for the board's consideration is a complaint seeking the suspension of the gaming employee permit issued to Kevin Cohill. Mr. Cohill was arrested and charged with 6 felony-graded offenses due to his involvement in the assault of an Uber driver and the theft of the Uber driver's vehicle. The charges are pending. Mr. Cohill is not currently employed by a Pennsylvania casino. At this time, the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board suspend the gaming employee permit issued to Kevin Cohill.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the suspension of Kevin Cohill's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners of the Board. Benjamin Farrell, Ferrell, Assistant Enforcement Counsel for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter for consideration is a complaint for revocation of the gaming employee permit issued to Timothy Green. While working his shift as a manager of the Diamond Lounge at Harris, Philadelphia, Mr. Green stole $110 from a cash register. Mr. Green was arrested and charged by the Pennsylvania State Police, and Mr. Green is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania gaming industry. At this time, OEC requests the board issue an order revoking the gaming employee permit issued to Mr. Green.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Timothy Green's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter for your consideration is a complaint for suspension of the non-gaming employee registration issued to Godwin Doe. The Derby Borough Police Department arrested and charged Mr. Doe with 1 count of felony fleeing and attempting to elude an officer, 1 count of driving under the influence, and 5 summary traffic offenses, following a police chase in which he exhibited signs of being impaired. Mr. Doe is not currently employed in the Pennsylvania gaming industry. At this time, OEC requests that the board issue an order suspending the non-gaming employee registration issued to Godwin Doe.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the suspension of Godwin Doe's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Chief Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barish, members of the board. Dustin Miller on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter today is a request for suspension involving Dejan Fontaine. Mr. Fontaine holds a non-gaming employee registration. Mr. Fontaine was arrested and charged with firearms not to be carried without a license, a felony offense, possession of marijuana, carrying firearms in public, 2 counts of felony theft, 2 counts of felony receiving stolen property, and unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. All charges remain pending. Based upon the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked the board to consider the suspension of Dejan Fontaine's non-gaming employee registration.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the suspension of Dejan Fontaine's non-gaming employee registration described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
The next matter today is a request for revocation involving Timmy Liu. Mr. Liu holds a gaming employee occupation permit. Mr. Liu compromised the integrity of table game play during his employment at Parks Casino. Surveillance review of Mr. Liu's activity while dealing cards at Parks revealed numerous instances of Mr. Liu failing to collect losing wagers and paying losing wagers. In total, Mr. Liu failed to collect 342 losing wagers and paid 5 losing wagers during 132 hands, resulting in a $6,565 loss to Parks Casino. Mr. Liu was terminated from his employment at Parks and is not currently employed in Pennsylvania's gaming industry. Based on the foregoing, the Office of Enforcement Counsel asked the board to consider the revocation of Timmy Liu's gaming employee occupation permit.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Timmy Liu's gaming employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the board. John Crowe, C-R-O-H-E, Assistant Enforcement Counsel for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter for the board's consideration is the revocation of the G2 employee permit held by Kenneth Rollins. Mr. Rollins was terminated and criminally charged for his role in rigging a promotional event held at Mohegan Sun. The Office of Enforcement Counsel now requests that the board revoke the G2 employee permit held by Kenneth Rollins.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board approve the revocation of Kenneth Rowland's G2 employee occupation permit as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Beth Manifesto on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel, MANIFESTO. The next matter for the board's consideration is the revocation of the non-gaming registration issued to Prem Satsankar, Premsatsankher. While working as an EVS attendant at Rivers Casino, Mr. Satsankar removed a voucher for $71.74 from a slot machine and gave it to a friend who then attempted to cash it. As such, the Office of Enforcement Counsel would respectfully request the board revoke the non-gaming registration issued to Prem Satsankar.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the revocation of Prem Satsankar's non-gaming employee registration as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion's adopted.
The remaining matters on the agenda consist of enforcement actions in which the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed petitions seeking the involuntary exclusion of individuals whose presence in a licensed facility are inimical to the interests of the Commonwealth and are licensed gaming therein. In each instance, the petition for exclusion has been filed with the Board's Office of Hearings and Appeal and properly served upon the individual named in the petition. The individual named in the petition failed to respond within 30 days as required by board regulation. As a result, the Office of Enforcement Counsel filed a request for default judgment in each instance and properly served the same upon each named individual. Therefore, all facts in each petition are deemed admitted. All filed documents have been provided to the board, and the matters are presently ripe for the board's consideration. In each instance, if the board orders the proposed exclusion, each individual's photo, personal identifiers, and a summary of their inimical conduct will be placed on the board's public website.
Good afternoon, Michael Rowland once again with the Office of Enforcement Counsel. The next matter is a request to place Sylvie Morales on the involuntary exclusion list. Ms. Morales left her 3 children, ages 14 years, 6 years, and 2 months, unattended in her vehicle parked in Sands parking garage for approximately 52 minutes as she gamed at multiple slot machines. Ms. Morales was issued a permanent eviction by Sands Security and was cited by the Bethlehem City Police Department with 1 count of leaving an unattended child in a motor vehicle. She pled guilty to that charge. The matter is now before the board to consider the placement of Sylvie Morales on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Sylvie Morales to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. James Armstrong for the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Next on the agenda for the board's consideration is a request to place Arthur Lewis on the exclusion list because of his involvement in cheating at a heads-up Hold'em game at Sugar House Casino. The investigation revealed that Mr. Lewis failed to pay full restitution. Accordingly, OEC requests the board enter judgment upon default and place Mr. Lewis on the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Arthur Lewis to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Good afternoon, Chairman Barish, members of the board. David Tepper, TEPPER, on behalf of the Office of Enforcement Counsel. Next on the agenda is a request to place Dennis McCabe on the involuntary exclusion list. While a patron at Parks, Mr. McCabe stole a voucher from a patron and cashed it while the patron was experiencing a medical emergency. As a result of this conduct, Mr. McCabe was criminally charged by the Pennsylvania State Police, and at this time the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board add Dennis McCabe to the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Dennis McCabe to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's adopted.
Next on the agenda is a request to place Heriberto Rodriguez on the involuntary exclusion list. Mr. Rodriguez entered multiple motor vehicles parked in the Parks parking lot without the owner's permission and stole a vehicle from the valet pickup drop-off lane, which was owned by a company doing work at Parks. As a result of his conduct, Mr. Rodriguez was criminally charged by the Ben Salem Police Department, and at this time the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board add Heriberto Rodriguez to the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Heriberto Rodriguez to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Next on the agenda is a request to place Justin Smith on the involuntary exclusion list. While a patron at Parks, Mr. Smith stole $415 from a cocktail server's tip jar and then fled the casino. As a result of his conduct, Mr. Smith was criminally charged by the Pennsylvania State Police, and at this time the Office of Enforcement Counsel requests that the board add Justin Smith to the board's involuntary exclusion list.
Questions or comments from the board? May I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the addition of Justin Smith to the PGCB involuntary exclusion list as described by the Office of Enforcement Counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion's adopted.
Thank you. That concludes our business.
Thank you all. That concludes today's meeting. The next scheduled public meeting will be held on Wednesday, December 19th at 10 a.m. in this room. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion is adopted. We are adjourned. Thank you, one and all.
Nobody.